Well, there's an unspoken rule in churches. Don't bring your darkness here. Now, we may not say this out loud, but we all feel this pressure to smile, to shake hands, to sing, and really to pretend that everything is fine. What happens when you're struggling? What happens if you're angry with God, how He's working in your life, or not working at all, it feels like? Well, I'll pray for you. That's the response that we hear. But many of us have felt like we need to work all of those things out before we come to church. I've heard that from people. Yeah, I feel like I need to improve my life before I come to church. God help us for that attitude. By the way, if any of us are guilty of that, repent right now. I've had to do that plenty of times. And see, here's the thing. We're not necessarily trying to be fake, although that is a situation in many churches. It's just that most of us don't know what to do with our sorrow and our sadness. We don't know what to do when we have doubts about God or when we question His silence. And this tension that feels like God is silent in the face of our suffering is not really unique to us as individuals. This has been dealt with by Christians throughout history. One powerful example is from a novel that was turned into a movie not that long ago called Silence. And in this novel, the story is of Jesuit missionaries who travel to Japan in the 17th century. And in Japan at the time, Christianity was outlawed, and those who followed Jesus were tortured and killed. And so the story, which was loosely based on history, one of the priests, Father Rodriguez, prays desperately as he watches innocent believers suffer. Gruesome torture. And he begs God to speak, to act, to do something, and all he hears is silence. And the silence nearly breaks him. Until the most painful moment when he's faced with the choice to either watch innocent Christians suffer, or they had a plate with a picture of Jesus on the ground and he had to step on it as an act of apostasy. And so these officials in Japan gave him that option: either watch these people die or you recant your faith. And as he hesitates, he's trying to figure out, what should I do? Should I step on this image of Jesus, or do I let these people die? He hears a voice. And the novel captures it, I think, better than the movie, although it is a moving kind of part of the film. The voice says this, and I quote, "Trample, trample. I, more than anyone, know of the pain in your foot. Trample. It was to be trampled on by men that I was born into this world." It's Jesus speaking in this film. And for the first time, Rodriguez realizes Christ was not absent in the silence. He was present. He was suffering with them as a brother, as a Savior, as a Messiah who bore the weight of their sin. The silence didn't mean that God didn't care. It meant that God was carrying this pain. And that's the very place that Psalm 10 begins, this question that so many of us maybe are afraid to ask. Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? This priest in the story sat and watched these innocent believers being brutalized and tortured. And he's saying, God, why haven't you stopped this? Where are you? Why are you so far away? And in Psalm 10, these are not words of someone who's given up on God, but of someone who trusts God enough to ask these hard questions. You have these relationships in your life where you can ask someone anything, where you can approach someone and you can ask them questions that anyone else would be offended by. That's what the psalmist is doing. He's coming to God knowing that he can ask these questions. This is, at least at the beginning, a very dark psalm. not to dwell in despair, but we're going to sit here and read this to learn how to be honest with God when life is anything but easy. And I think this psalm gives us permission to ask these hard questions. It points us to a God who may feel far, but in reality never leaves us. So let's read this together, Psalm chapter 10. Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourselves in times of trouble? In arrogance, the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised. For the wicked boast of the desires of his soul, and the greedy one for gain curses and renounces the Lord. In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him, and his thoughts are, there is no God. His ways prosper at all times. Your judgments are on high out of his sight. As for his foes, he puffs at them. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved. Throughout all the generations, I shall not meet adversity. His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. He sits in ambush in the villages, in hiding places. He murders the innocent. His eyes stealthily watch for the helpless. He lurks in ambush like a lion in his thicket. He lurks that he may seize the poor. He seizes the poor when he draws them into his net. The helpless are crushed, sink down and fall by his might. He says in his heart, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. Arise, O Lord, O God. Lift up your hand. Forget not the afflicted. Why does the wicked renounce God and say in his heart, you will not call to account? But you do see, for you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. You have been the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evildoer. Call his wickedness to account till you find none. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations perish from his land. O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, so that the man who is of the earth may strike terror no more. People enjoy reading the Psalms, often because they're shorter. You can read them fairly quickly. They're a little bit more rhythm in it. They're written as a song or as a poem. And they don't require you to have like a detailed theological system, at least not always. Verses from the Psalms fit neatly on artwork in your homes and t-shirts that you wear. And this desire to be happy, and that's why we read a lot of the Psalms, is because it's like, come into the courts of praise and those happier Psalms. This desire moves into churches to a point where if you look at most church websites, what are the words that you're hearing as definitions of how they operate? You're hearing things like energetic, inspirational, uplifting, dynamic, encouraging. They're trying to give good thoughts. It's a happy place that people can come in, be refreshed, and then be sent out and have a great week. Would any church describe their worship service as sorrowful, crushed, full of anguish and despair? Come to our church and cry. Like, no one would do that. But is it really that absurd to think that a church should lean into these darker areas? Isn't it more absurd to think that life should be full of spiritual rainbows and unicorns than we float around without a care and just smiling all the time? That's not reality. The Psalms can be dark. They're full of sorrow and sadness and pleading with God to do something when it seems like God has gone silent. In other words, the Psalms are real life. I don't know if you're like me. I tend to be drawn into movies that are a little darker. Troubling maybe, books that are off the wall. I like stories, novels that don't have a happy ending. I like that feeling after you read it or after you watch it where you're just bothered by it and it sticks with you. I know it's a little twisted, but it's true. And I think through this, and I know some of you like Amish romance and you like the Hallmark movies, totally get that, but you get that's not reality, right? Hallmark movies are perfect. The setting is perfect. There's a little bit of snow on the ground, but not too much, and none on the roads. And everybody falls in love at the end. Everybody's happy. And then we wonder, we watch these shows, we read these stories, and we're like, why can't that be my life? Because it's not. It's not reality. Reality is full of doubt. It's full of not having the answers. It's suffering and sadness. And not only is the Bible not full of shiny, happy people holding hands, portraying our faith in that bubbly way doesn't really cause us to have any connection with people outside of the faith either. If all that we're doing is smiling and dancing around, that's not reality for almost everyone else outside of the church. So what helps people to connect with us? Honesty. Lament. Those are real, raw emotions that we all face. And if we can show in some way, shape, or form that through the suffering that we're experiencing, through those difficult times, there is a light at the end. There is a glimmer of hope at the end, and that's what we cling to. That is far more appealing to people than us just dancing around and smiling all the time and having a great time with each other. That we can weep, that we can lament, that we can ask questions that some people think are offensive. That is so attractive to people. It's attractive to me. And this is what Psalm 10 is all about, at least at the beginning of this. What he writes is raw. It's a cry of abandonment. I can tell you this, you've never seen this verse framed in someone's house. Ever. Put it up in your house and see the reactions. Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourselves in times of trouble? It wouldn't sell. But the writer here feels like God has forgotten him. We see that he works through this as the psalm progresses, but he comes to God asking, where are you right now? If we're supposed to be spiritual giants, we won't ask those questions. At least not out loud. I don't want to pretend. I don't want to be fake. I don't want people to think that I've got all the answers when I'm struggling with the same questions that you are every single day. And the truth is, God already knows what's in my heart already. God knows what I think. God knows the questions that I have. I'm not hiding anything. You've probably thought this. Where is God? If you can pinpoint those moments in your life, those, every one of us has highs and lows. You can remember those lows, those valleys that you experience the darkest of nights. And if you can think through that, I almost guarantee you at some point you've asked in some way, where are you, God? We'll just pray and it'll get better. No, it won't. No, it won't. Tell that to the missionaries and the Christians who have given their lives up for the sake of the gospel. In this life, no, it did not get any better. In fact, it got worse. Have you asked, what are you doing, God? Why won't you just speak? Why is there so much happening in my life that is just complete chaos? See, the psalmist knows that God is present, but it seems like God is indifferent to the troubles of his people. At least that's what it feels like. Where is God? Why is he so far away? Why is he hiding? We need him now. Like the previous Psalm 9, the writer of chapter 10 sees terrible things happening. Wicked people are celebrating their victories. See, I don't like any kind of injustice, no matter how trivial it is. I've been known to stand on the sidelines of a soccer game and let the referee know gently when I think he's made a bad call. It's that sense of injustice, right? My son's team is trying so hard and they're doing the right thing, at least in my eyes. They're doing the right thing and the referee makes a call that all of us see as blatantly incorrect. I've got a voice that travels and I say things, not bad things, but come on! It's that sense of injustice. Now, that's just a game, ultimately meaningless in the whole scheme of life. But it's a taste of the problem that I have with injustice. When I see bad guys getting away with things, I'm bothered by when I see people abuse others. I'm bothered when I see people get away with crimes because they had the money to pay for expensive lawyers. I'm bothered by the fact that people who are well connected are able to abuse people at the bottom and still get away with it because they can manipulate the system. I'm bothered by that. That's not justice. If that's you, Psalm 10 is your psalm. I found so much comfort in this week. In verse 2, the author kind of is building his case. He says this, "In arrogance the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised." This is not revenge or getting even. This is about justice. The wicked here in this psalm have been abusing the poor, and they're getting away with it. No one is stopping them, and the author says that it feels like God is just standing back and doing nothing. Like he's ignoring it. Now, here's the key difference. There's a difference between feeling and knowing, right? Knowing, we're talking about facts, right? There's right or wrong in that. Feeling is just your emotions. There's really not a right or wrong in that you may feel one way and someone else may feel a different way. But the reality is those feelings are valid because they're your feelings. So here's the differentiation. I sometimes feel like the referees are getting paid off by the other team. It feels like that sometimes. We're down like 3 or 4 goals, and it feels like they're getting a couple bucks. I know that's not happening, but it feels like it, right? It may feel like God is far away and doesn't care about what's going on in your life, but you know that He is present and He's active and that He loves His people. The best example of this would be Jesus right before His death. What did He say? Well, one of the things that He said was, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus, fully God, fully man, knew that the Father did not forsake Him. The Father did not separate Himself from Him. They were still the Trinity. Jesus did not stop being God when He was hanging on the cross. It sounds like Psalm 10 to me. The argument fits that we can feel and know things that are sometimes a little different. Jesus' cry was not a denial of God's presence or His love, but an expression of real anguish as He bore the weight of sin. See, I know and you know that God is sovereign and that He has a plan for all things, including all the bad we've experienced, but it often feels like we're alone. It sometimes feels like God is silent. Remember that we worship a God that knows what it's like to be us. This is one of the beauties of the incarnation, among many other things, of Jesus becoming man. He knows what it's like to be human. So when we pray to God, God hears our prayers, and God understands more than any other deity that's ever been made up. God understands what it is to be us and the pain and the suffering that we experience. Jesus felt that on the cross. And sometimes those feelings don't go away. Some of you will carry things for the rest of your life. And Psalm 10 shows that it may even get worse. Verses 3 through 7, we see that evil seems to reign. The greedy, the oppressive, the violent people may not experience justice. And that is troubling. It should be. The psalmist says that these people boast, they despise God, they are arrogant, and they think they're safe, and that God can't ever judge them. And it gets worse in verses 8 through 11. The evil people wait to ambush and murder innocent people. They steal from the poor. The people who can't defend themselves are crushed. All the while, the oppressor, the victimizer, says in his heart, God has forgotten, He has hidden His face, He will never see it. The wicked person assumes that because God hasn't acted immediately, He must not care or He's not going to intervene. This internal monologue highlights the false confidence of spiritual blindness. It's part of the broader idea of the wicked are prospering and the innocent are suffering. The psalmist is again being honest. The wicked people appear to be untouchable. They do all that they want as if God doesn't exist, and it seems that God is okay with it. He's letting it happen. Again, feeling and knowing. This psalm is your permission to go to God and tell him what you think. This is not sacrilegious. This is not some sin that you can't be forgiven for. You go to God and you say what the psalmist is saying in Psalm chapter 10. God already knows it. He knows your heart. But the ability to speak it out, God, where are you in this? So what do we do when we feel like God has gone silent? What do we do when there is no answer and it seems like wickedness is ruling? Does God no longer care about you? Or does this draw you deeper into your faith, knowing that God hears, but that he may have a different path than you expected? What should we do? Now, this sounds really cliche. Let me flesh this out. We trust God more. I get it. You're in the middle of a difficult time, or unspeakable things have happened or are happening to you, and someone just says, well, trust God more. That makes me angry when people tell me that. I don't know about you. I don't want spiritual platitudes or cliches. I want something that's actually going to help me, not just do this and things will be great. So it does sound counterintuitive, but if we feel like someone is letting us down, we're not going to keep trusting them more. But what is the pattern here in Psalm 10? Look at verse 12. The psalmist cries out to God in faith. He doesn't lose faith. He doesn't allow the circumstances to control his hope, but he does plead. Look at verse 14. He says, but you do see, for you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. You have been the helper of the fatherless. Do you see this kind of transition that's happening? God, where are you? I see all this bad stuff happening. Oh, wait, I'm seeing now. I'm still angry about all this stuff. I still don't understand it, but I'm trusting. Because I've seen it. And I see that God sees what's happening. The most vulnerable people who have nowhere to turn, no one to help them, can still find peace in God. The overarching theological truth in this is that God does things for us that we can't do for ourselves. Beginning with your own salvation. You alone can't bring justice to the world. You're not Superman. You alone can't fix the wickedness of people. You alone can't solve all of the problems that we face. You can't do it. All of us together can't do it. No peace summit, no meeting of world leaders, no meeting of churches can solve the biggest problems that we face. Only God can. And the author of the Psalms is seeing this. He puts his hope in God even when it doesn't make much sense. So what do we do with the silence of God, the arrogance of the wicked, the suffering of the innocent? We do what the psalmist does. We keep crying out. We keep wrestling in prayer. We don't stop hoping just because we hurt. We don't let what we see define what we believe. Because right up in the middle of this chaos, the psalmist doesn't give up. He looks up. Even when God feels far, he says, but you do see. He knows that God isn't blind to our pain. And if God sees, then justice is not forgotten. If God sees, then hope is not wasted. If God sees, then evil will not win. If you believe in an all-powerful God, if you believe in a God that can speak everything that we see and everything that we know into existence, how in the world is God not bigger than your suffering? How is God not bigger than your pain? How does God not have a plan for what you're going through? And the truth is, I want to be honest, and you know this for a fact, you may not hear this from pulpits, your pain may not go away, and your pain may never be known, at least this side of heaven. That suffering, whatever that you go through, may make no sense. But because we believe that God is all-powerful and that God is sovereign, we believe that there is some reason and some purpose for all of it. There has to be. But the psalm doesn't end in this tension. It actually ends in triumph. The psalmist began crying out, "Where are you, God?" Now declares, "The Lord is king forever and ever." God sees, he hears, and he will act. The wicked may have their day now, but it will not last. Justice is coming. The psalm doesn't end with the wicked, it ends with the king. This is a turn that's happening. This psalmist is going through every possible emotion that anyone could ever imagine. And he sees this. Evil people may build kingdoms for themselves. They may sit on thrones of power and money and corruption, but their reign is temporary. God's reign is eternal. He's not up for re-election. He doesn't get pushed out by violence or voted out by popular opinion. God is king forever and ever. The psalmist started with doubt, but now he's anchored in the truth that God rules even when evil seems to win. What changed for him then? It wasn't his circumstances. The wicked are still active. The afflicted are still hurting. But the psalmist sees something deeper. God is not absent, and he's not done. Look at verses 17 and 18. O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, so that man who is of the earth may strike terror no more. God not only sees, he hears, he strengthens, he acts, he will bring justice. This is not vague optimism. This is not just some blind hope. This is rooted in the character of God that we see unfolding throughout Scripture. The fatherless are not forsaken. The afflicted are not forgotten. The wicked are not in control. And if you want proof, look to Jesus. On the cross, Jesus entered the silence that we see in Psalm 10. He cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" But he didn't stop trusting that this is what needs to be done. He handed his spirit to the Father. He bore injustice, took our sin, rose again, proving once and for all that evil doesn't get the last word. God does. The gospel tells us that all this pain and suffering is so infinitesimal compared to the glory and goodness of God. It is so hard to see that sometimes, fair enough. And there are times when we doubt. There are times that we question. There are times that we don't understand. But when you read Scripture and you see this unfolding story of what God has done, and you see time and again that God's plan is so much better than anything that we can devise. Evil does not get the last word. It has some strength now, and it grows, and it grows, and it grows, but one day it will be stamped out forever. So what do we do when the world feels dark and unfair? And it does. We cry out, we trust, and we hope. We anchor our lives in the promise that God is king forever and ever. He will do justice. He will strengthen the broken. He will wipe away every tear. We also need to remember the silence is not empty. The king is still on his throne, and he will not forget his people. This leaves us where Psalm 10 leaves us, not with all the answers, but with real hope. A day of judgment is coming. The wicked will not go unpunished. The proud will be humbled. Oppressors will be silenced. Evil may look strong today, but its time is short. The king will rise, and he will make all things right. And in the meantime, we are called not to ignore the pain or the suffering or pretend that it will somehow just magically disappear, or that everything's okay. I think Psalm 10 invites us, maybe even commands us, if we want to step that far, to do three things: to lament with honesty, to cry out when it hurts, to say, "God, where are you?" without fear that we're going to be somehow pushed away. I can say this as a pastor. I've had almost everything said to me that you can think of. I've got stories. But when I sit across a table or I visit someone in their home or they come into my home and they just bare their soul, it's a special moment. Because all of this that we're holding ourselves in and these questions and doubts that we can't speak because we're afraid that we're going to be judged, or we're going to have people say you can't come to our church anymore, or you're not welcome because you're not faithful enough. No, It's the exact opposite. Having the courage to step out and ask God these tough questions and to speak what you're thinking, that's faith. So we lament with honesty. We also trust that God sees, to rest in the reality that He is not blind, He's not absent. And then finally, we cling to the hope of the gospel. The place where justice and mercy meet in full is at the cross of Christ. There, on a hill outside of Jerusalem, God dealt with evil. Not by turning away from it, but by sending His Son into it. Jesus took the judgment that we deserve so that we could receive mercy that we never earned. The cry of Psalm 10, "Where are you?" is answered in the cry of the cross. It is finished. These are bookends to the gospel. So cry out, be honest, but don't lose heart. God is still king, justice is still coming, and hope is still alive. Would you pray with me?